but over 75% of Americans are unhappy and dissatisfied with their job. Change your job, change your life. And the number one reason why people are leaving their jobs is through
with a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's the life that we live. Suits and Scrubs.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Suits and Scrubs, where we talk about a little bit of health,
a little bit of wealth,
but a lot of love. As always. So I will be introducing my co-host, Zachary SVP, who will be talking about today's wealth episode, and rightly so. He is much more qualified for the job. So he has quite the background in finance. He has managed over $1 billion to date, which is quite impressive. He is a real estate investor. And fun fact about him, he was actually born premature, which could you only imagine how big he would have gotten if he had incubated for the full time.
I still say the doctor got it wrong, but my mom says that's not true.
So I will turn it over to you. Why don't you take over, honey?
Sure. Thank you, Em. So Emily is double board certified in internal and BC medicine. She's also exploring the possibility of functional medicine, which we talked about in our last episode, the microbiome. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. In addition to that, she's also looking at aesthetics. Fun fact about Emily is if you are on camera now, this is the first time she's ever worn a headband. I'm just joking. She actually has many of them, but she just doesn't wear them. But no, she thought she'd treat all you guys. Emily is an old soul. And a lot of times I see her, if I come home early or if I wake up from a nap or whatever, she's jamming out to 1950s or 20s music. Very, very old school. Okay, without further ado, turn it back to Em as she's our MC for this episode.
So let's get into the minutia, the nitty-gritty of today's episode. We are going to be talking about something that I think will resonate with a lot of people. So the title of today's podcast episode is Stop Settling for Less, Change Your Job.
Your life.
Change your job, change your life.
Whoopsies.
So
let's do that one more time. 1, 2, 3. Change your job, change your life. We're saying it like that because people pay attention.
So we are going to start with one of our segments today, which is called Under the Microscope.
Under the Microscope.
In this segment, we take a deep dive into medical studies
and financial reports and break them down in layman's terms. Before every episode, me and Emily actually do a lot of research behind the scenes and make sure that we are validating our assumptions. So Under the Microscope is a perfect segment for today. But over 75% of Americans are unhappy and dissatisfied with their job.
And a huge portion, 3/4 of employees would be more satisfied if they felt that they had more skill building opportunities within their responsibility within their job.
Yep. And the 18 to 34, about 34% are actually satisfied with the job, and it actually increases. By the time you're 40, over 40% of people are satisfied with their job. And the number one reason why people are leaving their jobs is through managerial disagreements.
And there's no surprise that there are some gender disparities in specifically retirement preparation. Females tend to be only close to 25% prepared for retirement, or at least happy with the preparation,
right.
Whereas it's more 4 in 10 males are at that level. So it's almost half of women are at the percentage or level that men are, which doesn't surprise me, but it's still a staggering statistic.
Yeah, absolutely. So stop going on your Pinterest and stop. I'm just kidding. That's not the point of this episode. But yes, so 52%.
Some hate mail.
It's a what?
You're going to get some hate mail for that one.
52% of Americans are feeling uninspired. They're feeling burnt out. So we actually had a whole episode dedicated to where have all the good doctors gone? Our episode 1 was about that. So we know all too well about being burnt out and being uninspired. So 52%.
Well, let's move into our segment number 2. We are doing one of our segments called ReFACTions.
ReFACTions. In this segment, we'll be reacting
And fact-checking.
on viral content. Get it? ReFACTions.
What made you decide to go opposite of all of your peers, which is keep the student loan debt around for a decade or two?
When I graduated from my surgical residency, I had a month off before I started my fellowship. I just had some time to breathe, and I was like, why don't I get my finances in order? I started figuring out how I could be debt-free and wealthy. That was one of my affirmations. Soon after I Googled that, I found the Ramsey program, and I was hooked when I started listening to the show. From that time, I decided to get on the plan and get after it.
What were these sacrifices that you made? Did you just keep living how you were living, or was it hard seeing how your friends were living at that point?
I bought a studio. It was like $700 a month. During my surgery fellowship, I took on extra call and did some moonlighting at smaller hospitals that needed some coverage.
Any of your peers cheering you on, or they all think you lost your mind?
Oh yeah, they were cheering me on. I was trying to get most of them to be on the plan. Wasn't as successful with everybody, but had a lot of support. People were like, wow, good for you.
So she goes on and talks about how she had $250,000 of student loan debt, which we did talk about that in the first episode, and what she did to sacrifice and just pay off her student loans in 4 years. We could keep playing it, but it's long and drawn out. And then she pushes a button and it goes doo-doo, and she wins. So my response to this, I actually think this is a very novel approach. I think if someone really getting out of residency or their surgical fellowship, which we talked last time, it could be 11 years plus for surgery. And so I think we did it a little bit differently. So before we got married, I've asked Emily to buy a house in her name specifically, because no matter how many homes that you have in real estate, once you get past 2, you have to put 20% down unless you follow the FHA rule. Pretty much what that means is you qualify for a certain level of financing, and then you only put 3 to 5% down, but you have to stay in there for a year and then you can move. Actually, one of the best ways for someone to actually gain wealth. For her, I think that if you look at our scoreboard, and so this house appreciated over $250,000 in less than 2 years. So in my mind, Emily's already paid off her student loans based upon this investment, and this was not a turnkey project. A few factors there. One is you have to look at your research for real estate. We're living in the fastest growing city, so it was made a lot of sense for us to buy that. Emily had a 2.5% interest rate and a first-time home buyer, so there's a lot of benefits with that. So if you're a first-time home buyer, there's a lot of benefits. We got a construction loan and put about $250,000 in this house, and then when we got the appraisal back, it wasn't easy. We were over budget on some things, but at the end of the day, substantially, we've gotten, we pretty much paid off for student loans if we sold this house tomorrow and go live in one of our rentals or whatever. So that's number one. Number two, Emily completely maxed out her retirement accounts. She almost had nothing when she started a few years ago. She now has $250,000. So if you look at the spreadsheet or the scorecard, $500,000, and she paid off $250,000 in 4 years. We did it in 2 years. And technically, Emily's not working right now, but she's looking for locum positions, but we're in a good financial position based upon the decisions that we made. So my reaction is, yes, this is good. If you guys don't want to dabble into real estate, I definitely think this is the path that we chose. But there's other ways to get there. There's other ways to, get that debt freedom. And a lot of you guys live in delayed gratification. If you're a doctor listening, that's just something to think about. So for us, I think we were just we accelerated it. So that's my reaction to it. Do you have any reactions to that?
Yeah, I know we touched on this during some of our prior episodes, but it's hard. That delayed gratification is hard as a resident, because you've already been working like a dog for so long that sometimes you want to be able to take a little bit of a break and enjoy yourself instead of putting all of that money and grinding and paying off the student loan. So I think it's encouraging to know that there are more ways to skin a cat, so to say. There are a lot of ways to go about things. So I think we can kind of start off with, I know we talked about your gift method during our prior episode, and the G was grow your skill set. So tell us a little bit more about that and kind of how it applies to today's topic.
Yeah. So change your life, change your job, or change your job, change your life, however you want to look at it. So yeah. So in the gift method, G stands for grow your skill sets. That's what we're going to focus on today. I believe that you should put every single resource into making yourself more attractive. And if this applies to everyone, but let's just say that you are someone that's under 35, 34, and you have time on your side and you want to invest in yourself. What I recommend in that is there's really 5 or 6 things that you can do. Number 1 is researching the most profitable and well-established companies. This is something that I did. I knew I wanted to get into finance. Instead of associating myself with a smaller company, I wanted to get into one of those big box companies because there's a lot of runway laterally and vertically. So that's one of the things that I recommend is researching the top companies that pay the best in your industry of choice. That's something that you're interested in. The second thing is understanding industries. So if you want to make money, I recommend looking at the top 5 industries. And off the top of my head, they're healthcare, finance, technology. Those 3 specific industries, they do pay the most. And so if you want to, accelerate your skill sets in that, you can look at that, specifically, and then you can dig deeper into there. Like, for example, I know the average tech person, with very specific certifications, which is my number 3 thing. Once you get the right level of certificates, Six Sigma, a lot of people are focused on Amazon Web Services. There are a lot of product management, project management that you can still get. I'm not a big fan of the project management anymore because I think that's kind of moving away. It's moving more to an agile methodology versus a waterfall methodology, which is just based upon the methodology by you delivering. So that's some things that you can do for continue education. Also is location. Say that you are in a location and you are paid a certain amount, whether it's New York, New Jersey, and then you move down to here. A lot of people, we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, a lot of people are moving from their jobs in New Jersey because down here, price of living is substantially lower. I remember maybe about 10, 15 years ago, someone I worked with who was a call center manager at Merrill Lynch, and she sold her house, had all the proceeds left over from that, and bought a mansion here, in her words, not mine, a mansion, she said. And so it was really, really impressive, like how she kind of used that as her financial pathway to independence. So there's different ways that you can do that. Another thing is the top 10 companies are all technology. You think about your Googles, your LinkedIn, your Facebook. So technology is absolutely here to stay. And then another way is the trends. So you can focus on trends. So for example, like artificial intelligence, I'm an AI enthusiast. That's something that a lot of people can jump on right now. Yes, you can argue AI is going to lose a lot of jobs, but at the end of the day, if you jump on that trend, understand how that works, you then can use that to prompt and also accelerate your own career and own journey and bring that into your workplace.
Yeah, and that's a lot of great information. I know we've talked about this a lot in the past, just kind of novel ways that you grew your own income, even at a young age, in your early 20s and beyond, now that we're in our mid to late 30s now.
Mm-hmm.
Tell our listeners a little bit more about kind of some specific strategies that you've used in the past to grow your income.
Yeah, I use them all. And so I knew I wanted to get in finance. That was something that I was very, very interested in just because I wanted to accelerate my financial literacy. That's not something that's taught in school, which absolutely should be taught in school. But also, looking at my parents, how does the money work? How does the economy work? How all that, what's the national debt? How does inflation work? So I was really, really interested in pursuing that. And then what I did is I look at the top companies in the financial services industry. And I banked with Bank of America, so I decided to work for them. And then I've also moved around quite a bit. And it change your life, change your job. So the theme of that is a lot of people get complacent in their specific jobs. I strongly recommend the best way to find a job is when you're not looking for one. That is very, very powerful. And I could talk more about that in just a second, but I want to finish, my thought process as far as how I got that level. I got many certifications. So my company offered Series 7. You can get $1,000 raise if you got a Series 7. Boy, did I spend every weekend trying to learn that. I was probably happiest I've ever been trying to get that license. It's a lot harder, especially if you work in the markets or whatever. It's a lot harder than I thought. So that's one thing. And then I got my Six Sigma. Six Sigma was so big back in the day. And I got my Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. You can get your black belt, your master black belt. It really is process improvement. I use that almost every single day in my life. I consider myself a productivity expert. Hence I'm using a PlayStation 5 to switch between cameras because it's a lot more efficient than what I was doing before. So yeah, there's a few things that I've done to really maximize your wealth building potential.
So multiple ways that you grew your skill set.
Absolutely.
Obviously. Yeah. You'd mentioned this about changing jobs, which I think we're seeing a huge shift. There were prior generations, the boomers, where you stay with the same employer, the same job for 30, 40 plus years. And you'd mentioned, the importance of obviously changing your jobs, the whole topic of today's discussion. But now that we're potentially going into another recession, I think that probably makes people nervous. Would you still recommend that, changing your job to help to grow your income faster?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, actually, I would recommend that. And here's why. If you see a job out there and they're hiring, 9 times out of 10, they have budget to build and to hire. That's a growing area in your department. And so, in my opinion, especially in times like now, it's better to look for jobs now because in some areas, your department may be consolidating underneath the center of excellence. You never know. Or it may be moving into a different strategy, which, offshore. That might be a strategy that your area, your department is looking for. So I strongly recommend people to look for jobs while they don't need one, especially in times like this, especially if you've been in the job for 2 to 5 years. I believe that healthy growth and healthy acceleration is changing your job every 2 to 5 years. More specifically, I quadrupled my income, which is in my ebook, which is if you go to suitsandscrubs.com, it has everything out there that I've done in my story that could probably help other people. If I had it at 18 years old, I would be a lot further than I am now. It's just taking, I say it's my life's work in 30 pages. And if you don't like it, you can use it as a doorstop. At the end of the day, it's trying to help people. And so I do believe that, my biggest tools to success was changing my job, but maximizing those skill sets. Don't overdo it, right? Because I've hired over 200, 300 people in my career. And if I see a lot of jumps in your resume, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't build loyalty. It doesn't build that. And if I hire someone, I want to invest in them, vice versa on the other side. So you want to do it strategically, and you want to do it through your network. But I absolutely recommend people, changing their jobs, especially right now.
It certainly makes sense because I think in any aspect of our lives, if we get comfortable in something, whether it's a relationship or it's a job, you're not really driven to change or improve yourself. But if you are, I think all of us kind of can relate to starting a new job and how uncomfortable it might make you feel. You're not an expert, might not be an expert in the field yet, but
Right.
I think it's a reason or an opportunity to learn and grow. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, for me, if I'm too comfortable in a job, then it's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
If I get too comfortable, I'm actually very comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I realize that is not very common.
Yeah.
with
Not
people.
a lot of people are like that.
No, but I'm like that because I like to learn, I like to grow, and if I'm in the same position, and then I just like to go out there and find. Now there are outliers, so if something is challenging enough, I'm in a really great spot right now where it's extremely challenging, and it's challenging almost to the point where a lot of people burn out. But I'm in it to win it for the long term. And yeah, so it's a great opportunity for me to continue to grow the skill sets and network and understand different aspects of the areas that I'm working in. And it's a highly visible space. So it's something that also is attracted to me because I believe that we're adding a lot of value. You know, a lot of things that we work on sometimes we're like, where's the value? Where's the value? This has absolute value. And that's very motivating to me.
Yeah.
So there are outliers. So I've been in my current role, you know, probably 2 years, 3 years, but I'm only getting better with time because there's still so much work to go ahead. So yeah, there are outliers.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to leave a company, but moving to a different position or learning something new, I think is definitely the route to what you're discussing. And then the other topic that I think would be helpful to discuss that makes a lot of us uncomfortable is just salary negotiations. And, you know, they say the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but give us a little bit of guidance there, especially for some of us that maybe are new to the professional world, that have been in graduate school or training for years and years and aren't really savvy in that aspect.
Yeah. Well, there's many ways that you can do salary negotiations. In my mind, you can do salary negotiations. I actually like salary negotiations. So if my team comes to me, they're like, hey, you know, this is something of interest to me. What can I do to get there? And so if you do it in a healthy way, it starts with the conversation. Now, I have seen where someone starts 3 months, or, you know, I've heard around the circle, you don't want to like be 3 months in a job and like, I'm crushing it, I'm asking for a raise. Then you become a prima donna, and that just turns people off. So first thing I would say is focus on your contributions and to your organization's goals and the overall goals. Anytime I've ever asked for an increase in salary, I don't just go in there and say, I want blah, blah, blah. I come extremely rehearsed. I've done my research. You know, I've done my research based upon what your peers make. Also, your location is big. So do your research is the number one thing I tell people. And then break that down based upon location strategy. So if you're in New York, or if you're in Charlotte, if you're in San Francisco, or if you're in the middle of the state, it doesn't really matter. You want to know exactly what your salary is benchmarked based upon what everyone else is, based upon the skill level, all of that. And then it really, once you have big accomplishments, timing is everything. So this is a secret of mine. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I'm going to share it. You really got to make sure you understand how your direct manager moves. And if they're extremely motivated behind something, like, hey, let's say that I want to move forward in this methodology, or I want to do this, volunteer for special projects. I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, I add value first. And then once the value is shown, I don't come in there and say, you're going to give me a raise and then add value. No. I add value first. I build that trust, build that confidence. And then over time, you know, I tell them, I said, if they're a really good manager, they will listen. And I say this, I'm really motivated by this, you know, and it's not money all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And there could be some non-salary negotiations and benefits. I've done this. You know, there was a time where a lot of people were burnt out and I needed more staff. I needed very specific roles. So I told them, this is not a money issue. Doesn't matter who sits in this role. No one will be successful unless this, you know, change. I've been saying it for a year or two or whatever, and it didn't change. And, you know, I was going to resign, you know, and I pretty much put it all out there and I said, listen, and then they got really serious, you know, and after like, you know, 3 or 4 executives resigned, a few technology folks have resigned, and like, oh wow, you know, and I have a lot of subject matter expertise in this situation. To me, it wasn't a salary increase. It was more about, I got to fix these issues to make sure that it could be successful, you know, and so that's something to think about. Just because you get a no doesn't mean you shut the door. Usually, if I get a no, I'm looking right into the camera because this is very important. It's a no but, right? And even if it's awkward or uncomfortable, and I know a lot of these are awkward and uncomfortable, I say, okay, I know you said no this time. I said, what would make me a more of attractive candidate in the future? And what can I do to meet your goals, your organization goals? I don't look at myself. I look at your goals, right? And then that ultimately is very, very helpful as well. Because, it's not a no. It's like, can we have this conversation again in 3 months or in 6 months? And also understand your timing. Most companies just can't give a raise in the middle of cycles or whatever. I'm a big fan of, putting the talent in my biggest areas of need. And so the same thing with my direct leaders, like what are their biggest focus? There's always coming down the conveyor belt. So that's also something that you can think of. And you have to be uncomfortable a little bit. So, those are the kind of things that I would recommend. And then also practice negotiation. Actually, there is a really cool AI out there. It's a negotiator, and you can actually, play with it and say, if you don't have someone like to talk to like on a one-on-one basis, you can actually do the negotiation that way.
I mean, I think that's all great advice. We've talked about a lot today. So, your first recommendation is definitely to focus on growing your skill set, your knowledge base, making yourself a more attractive candidate, and then constantly growing and changing. It's important to change positions, change roles, don't get stagnant. Definitely, make yourself more diversified. And then it's important to know your worth, be the squeaky wheel when you need to be the squeaky wheel, and to be persistent.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the term squeaky wheel. I would say a little bit differently. I would say be educated and understand how to move with your leader and with your organization. So you can have conversations, but it could be timing. I don't know if I finished that thought, but like, for example, some of my leaders are in great moods on Friday. So if I need something from them, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, mental note, I need to ask for this because it's maybe sensitive or blah, blah, blah. I ask them on Friday or ask them in a good mood. We have a hell of a win, bam. We remember that time we talked about that and blah, 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 blah. And again, it doesn't have to be just salary. It could be anything.
So you've got to be willing to speak up, but you also have to come prepared and add value.
That's right. That's the biggest part. I think a lot of people just want to jump in and just focus on the salary stuff, but I think adding value is the big. And if title promotions or recognition or salary and all that, you got to figure out what is motivated to you, like what motivates you, and then you have to spearhead that and campaign for it. That's really important.
Well, I really feel like picked up a lot and learned a lot from today's episode. Was there anything else that you
did you learn a lot?
I did. we know that I'm not the squeaky wheel. I am not the one to ask for a raise or to enjoy change, to like change. So all of that makes me uncomfortable, but I do agree. I think it's important, and I think that you've pushed me to do to make more of those moves, and honestly it's always put me out on top, and I've really benefited from it. So I think there's definitely proof in the pudding. So
that's what I'm talking about.
Thanks for that. A plus guidance. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you all listening to today's podcast episode. Our next episode will be next week. It'll be a health episode. We're going to be talking all about the health craze of these injectable weight loss medications and something that everybody's been referring to as Ozempic face. So make sure you tune in.
Ozempic face. What's Ozempic face?
I guess you'll have to find out next week.
Awesome.
All right. Y'all take care.
A little bit of health.
A lot of wealth.
One more time. A little bit of health.
A little bit of wealth.
And a lot of love.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
He's on the hustle, she's on the grind. There's no time to kill. From saving lives and new deadlines, and there's some holes to fill. With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's a life that we live. Suits and scrubs.